One of the great targets is the heart. I'm not talking about the physical heart, though they are connected. I'm talking about the heart vortex within the human energy field. The heart chakra, or wheel of light, as they call it in the East. And you know, we think of love in a certain way, being attracted to somebody or loving your kids. But actually, what I'm talking about, and I talk about this a lot in the answer, it's very different. It includes that, of course. But love in its true sense does not say, I want the best for my kids, although we do, of course we do. It says, I want the best for everybody. And when you open this, it's not just love in the sense that people perceive it. It opens you to infinity. It's our connection to all that is, has been, and ever can be. And through that connection, you have insight, you have knowing. When people have intuitive knowing, where do their hands go? Look, mate, I just know, I just know. This knows because it does know, because it's connected to that which does know. And when you open your heart, you're opening your connection to a level of awareness that allows you, first of all, to see the connections, because you're coming from that level where everything is one. Therefore, you can see the connections in the reality you're experiencing. But one definition I would give for this kind of love is the absence of fear. I would call evil the absence of love. I think that's what evil is. It's the absence of love. You infuse love into evil, it's not evil anymore. It's the absence of love. And this is what this cult is. It's the absence of love. That's why it does what it does. But it's also the absence of fear. Because once you open to this insight, this self-identity, you know there's nothing to fear. Because whatever happens, whatever experiences we're having, there'll be another one along in a minute, we are always an expression, a point of attention within all that is, has been, and ever can be. And however bad the experience we're currently having, that is what we always are. All that is, has been, and ever can be. And so, this does not fear. This will always do what it knows to be right, and therefore does not consider consequences for doing what it knows to be right, because it would never consider doing anything but what it knows to be right. Thus, consequences are irrelevant. This says, I'd like to do this, but what are the consequences? And you'll always find a list of consequences why you wouldn't do it. This says, I do what I know to be right. Consequences, therefore, are not even a conversation. And one of the great fears that people have, well, it's the foundation fear, I think, is the fear of the unknown, which manifests as the fear of death. And the manipulation of the fear of death is the manipulation of this pandemic.
Intellect will be useful only depending upon what it is identified with and what is held, what holds this, how steadily. So the next dimension of the mind, the first one is called as buddhi, which is the intellect. The second one is called as ahankara. Ahankara does not mean ego, this, that, it means the identity. Whatever you identified with, your intellect functions only around that. Simple, if you just identify with a nation, if you say, I'm an Indian, everything Indian looks beautiful. If you cross the border and you say you're something else, all that looks beautiful. So whatever you identified with, it's only with that the intellect functions. So ahankara is the identity. How consciously and how steadily your ahankara has been created will determine the effectiveness of your intellect. Just because it's sharp, it does not mean it'll be effective, because sharp intellect or a sharp knife can cause any amount of damage to you. If you have a sharp knife and you don't have a steady hand, you will cut yourself all over the place. That's all that's happening. Human suffering is just this, you don't know how to hold this intellect in your hand properly. Every day you're cutting yourself. All suffering is on self-help because your own mind causing this to you all the time. No matter what happens, people suffer, whichever way they suffer, because they don't know how to hold this intellect. If you had the mind of an earthworm, you would be quite peaceful. Yes? You're trying to do it in so many ways to reduce the sharpness of the intellect by drink, by drug, by overeating, by doing all kinds of things somehow to take away the sharpness because the damn thing hurts. It hurts not because that's its nature, it hurts because you do not know how to hold it. The next dimension of the mind is called as manas, which is a huge volume of memory. It is not here or there, entire body carries memory. So, manomaya kosha, this is called, a huge sack of memory. This memory is in various stacks, we'll not go into all these details considering some people have said a clear no. They don't want to have a mind, I'm sorry, they don't want to know anything about the mind. So the fourth dimension of the mind is called as chitta. Chitta means it's pure intelligence. It is unsullied by memory. It has no trace of any kind of memory, it's just pure intelligence. If you touch this, then you have access to what you're referring to as the source of creation, because all kinds of things might have been fed to you. God is this, God is love, God is compassion, God is kind, whatever. Somebody come, stand on the edge of this stage, say all the prayer you want to say and fall. Let me see whether compassion happens to you or a cracked bone happens to you. I would like to check, all right? All these things have been made up because whatever somebody is deprived of, they will attribute that quality to their idea of God.
God said He will give you beauty for ashes. But here's the key, you have to let go of the ashes before you receive the beauty. You can't go around hurt, living offended, upset, and see the new things God has in store. You have to clear out the clutter. That's what makes room for God to give you the beauty. The mistake we make sometimes is we think we have to get even. We have to pay people back. No, that's not your job. If you'll turn it over to God, He'll be your vindicator. He'll bring justice into your life. He saw every hurt, every wrong, every person that took advantage of you. I've learned God will vindicate you better than you can vindicate yourself. David said, God will prepare a table before you in the presence of your enemies. That means when God brings you out, those people that did you wrong, the people that tried to hold you back, they will see you promoted, honored, in a position of influence. God is not going to vindicate you in private, He's going to do it in public. So your enemies see you blessed, favored, successful. When my dad went to be with the Lord and I stepped up to pastor the church, I was very insecure. I had never ministered before. One Sunday, right after I first started speaking, I was walking through the front lobby and I overheard these two older ladies talking. One said, "He's not as good as his father." The other answered, "Yeah, I don't think he's going to make it." That was the last thing I needed to hear. It was like my worst nightmare. I was tempted to shrink back, think I can't do this, nobody's going to listen to me. But I felt something rise up in me so strongly, I thought, who are they to tell me what I can't do? They didn't breathe life into me. They don't determine my destiny. They didn't know me before I was formed in my mother's womb. I don't need their approval. I don't have to have them to be for me. I did what I'm asking you to do. I cleared out the clutter. And every time their voices came to my mind, I said, no thanks, I am well able. I am strong in the Lord. God being for me is more than the world being against me. And they still may not like me, but that's okay. When they turn on the television, they probably see me. When they're flipping through Sirius XM, they might hear me. What was that? God preparing a table in the presence of my enemies. When we were trying to acquire this building, the former Compaq Center, a well-known business leader in Houston told a friend of mine that it would be a cold day in hell before Lakewood got the Compaq Center. He was very against us. The company we were up against was much bigger, had many more resources, but God stepped in and made things happen that we never could make happen, and here we are today. But I can imagine every time that man drives down the freeway, sees our building with the big Lakewood sign, he must think it's a cold day in hell, because here we are. What was that? God honoring us in front of the opposition. And I'm not gloating over it, not too much anyway, but here's my point. God knows how to vindicate you. It would be one thing if He did it in private. We would be grateful, but God is going to do it in public. He's preparing a table in the presence of your enemies.
And letting go of fear is the key thing. And when you get to that point where you're observing your mind and you're observing your emotions instead of being them, it's amazing how fear, and I can only talk for myself and talking to other people who've been through it, fear starts to leave you. Because what is there to fear when you've reached that point, not only of realization, but of observing the world from a point of view of that which is always has been, always will be, infinite consciousness, eternal consciousness, which is what we are. The other thing that it holds us in servitude is insecurity. How many people are always put a mask to the world? It's not who they really are. It's what they think other people think they should be. So instead of putting ourselves to the world, we put this mask to the world that we think is acceptable to the world. Consciousness does not do insecurity, and it certainly doesn't do putting masks on to fulfill other people's perceptions of what you should be. Consciousness is all possibility. It is all potential. You know, people think about, one consciousness, and they think, oh, that means, yeah, I'm one consciousness, yeah, I'm one consciousness, I'm one consciousness. If it's some clone-like state, consciousness, in the firm that I'm talking about, at the infinite level of us, is all possibility. Therefore, when we celebrate our uniqueness and celebrate our diversity and celebrate the diversity and uniqueness of each other, we are celebrating the fact that we are infinite consciousness, because we're celebrating all possibility. What happens is when we get caught in mind, that's when you get the clone. Yeah, I'm mind. Yeah, I'm mind. Yes, I'm mind. All the bloody clones line up, all look the same and all the rest of it, and speak the same and think the same. That's mind. So, celebrating uniqueness and being conscious are the same things. And that's why if you look, the more mind has taken over, the more this earth has become more and more uniform. And as we become more and more conscious, we will be celebrating diversity, and diversity will start to return in the way we live our lives. The key thing to breaking the spell is breaking out of belief systems. It's a good question. What would consciousness do? How would consciousness see this? Well, like I said earlier, consciousness doesn't do religion, because religion is a mind phenomenon that sees everything in terms of apartness and rules and regulations and all the rest of it. Consciousness doesn't do that. So religion's out. If we are going to be conscious, then religion's gone. Politics, well, consciousness vote? I mean, what's going on? Consciousness doesn't do belief systems like politics, so that's gone, that belief system. Race, it doesn't do race. You know, the human form is just a vehicle for consciousness to experience this reality. It doesn't do my genetic spacesuit is better than yours, and because yours is of different color or comes from a different background, I'm better than you, and I'm the master race, or I'm the chosen race, and all the rest of it. Consciousness doesn't do that. Mind does that. When we think in those terms, we're in mind, not consciousness. And self-identity
If we have a self-identity that says, I am my body and I am my name and that is me, that is who I am, we're in mind. When we say my name and my body and my life is my experience, the experience of my consciousness, then we're recognizing who we really are, which is consciousness having an experience.
Yeah. Why do you think these people see the media as being so important? You know, the reality is quite different. You know, the media isn't really important. It's how we use it. It's how we view it. You know, the reality is that we, as a society, in this hypnotized and almost catatonic and comatose state, we have given our free will for everything that's going on. We've given our free will consent to the state the planet is in today. Most people in modern societies, I mean, you know, we saturate our minds with all sorts of unhealthy things that are not good for us. I mean, things that are served up for us on television. And people are quite addicted to their televisions. Most people spend their time consuming violence, pornography, greed, selfishness, hatred, you know, incessant bad news and fear and terror. I mean, when was the last time a lot of people out there just stopped and thought about something really, really beautiful and really pure? You know, something wonderful that really warms your heart and puts that energy into the field. You know, when was the last time you stopped and did that? The planet is the way it is because of our collective thoughts about the planet. And those people out there who don't affect positive change, they are complicit in their inaction. And every time you look the other way when you see an injustice, your thought at the subconscious level of creation to the Creator is your allowance of these things to occur. And in so doing, you're serving the wrong purpose. Those who think violent thoughts against those whom they perceive to be the rulers of this world, be careful what you wish for, folks, because all thoughts and words are creative. And there was a statement I read somewhere, I'm not sure who it was by, that said, in order to choose the positive path, at least 51% of our thoughts and actions must be dedicated to the service of others. But for the negative path, at least 95% of our thoughts and actions must be directed towards self-service. And between those 2 points lies the sinkhole of indifference. And it's truly a sinkhole, folks. Indifference is the vein of consciousness, to lead you down a path of repetition that becomes ever more negative. You know, it's the will to serve self, and it becomes ever more negative and polarized. Because negativity is necessary, folks. It's very important, for without negativity, there can be no positivity. And without the negative, there can't be the positive. It's all about free will and freedom of choice, my friends. And if negativity did not exist, there would be no choice, because there would be nothing for us to choose between. It's all about service to self or service to others. That's the whole thing about this life, service to self or service to others. Do the right thing in all that you do, or do what is right for you personally. That's the choice, folks. And it's a pretty easy choice to make once you begin to understand this sort of thing. I choose service to others. And I don't try to wake up people to the reality of these things out of fear. I don't try to wake people up to what's going on in the world because I'm worried about the future. I do it because I love you. I do it because I love you all. I truly do. I've never met a person that I didn't love, even the most negative. You know, some people will just say these are evil people. I don't see them as evil. I see them as polarized. And it's necessary for them to be that way. I mean, otherwise they wouldn't be that way. Because having these polarized energies in the world is the only way that consciousness can ascend into something more positive.
So can you believe in a future that you can't see or experience with your senses yet, but you've thought about enough times in your mind that your brain is literally changed to look like the event has already happened? Neuroscience says it's absolutely possible. Now, your personality creates your personal reality. That's it. It's that simple. And your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel. So the present personality who's sitting here today, you, has created the present personal reality called your life. Would you agree? Would you also agree then, if you wanted to create a new personal reality, that on a fundamental level, you would have to change the thoughts that you are thinking, the behaviors and habits that you're demonstrating, and the emotions that you've memorized that's become part of your identity? And most people try to create a new personal reality as the same personality, and it never works. We have to become somebody else. So then, as you keep thinking the same thoughts, performing the same actions, and living by the same experiences that produce the same emotions, there's a principle in neuroscience that says nerve cells that fire together wire together. And if you keep repeating the same states of mind and body over and over again, your brain begins to fire in the same sequences, in the same patterns and same combinations. And whenever you make your brain work in a certain way, that's called mind. Mind is the brain in action. So as you remind yourself every day who you think you are, you're causing your brain to fire in the exact same ways. And as they fire and wire in the same patterns over time, the brain moves into a very finite signature, and that's called your personality. Now, that box in your brain isn't literally a box, but it's the most commonly wired, neurologically fired programs that run redundantly because we keep doing the same things over and over again. To change your mind, then, is to make the brain work in new sequences and new patterns and new combinations, to begin to make the brain work differently. And the one ingredient that allows us to do that is knowledge or information. Because every time you learn something new, you make a new connection in your brain. That's what learning is. Learning is forging new connections. Remembering is maintaining or sustaining those connections. So now, every time you have a thought, you make a chemical. And if you have a great thought, or an unlimited thought, or a joyful thought, you turn on a set of circuits in your brain that fires in a very specific sequence, pattern, and combination that produces a level of mind that turns on another part of the brain that makes a chemical for you to begin to feel exactly the way you were just thinking, great or unlimited or joyful.
Human beings, we can feel like we're special, and we can feel like no one's ever been through what I've been through, and the world is hard for me and easier for everyone else. Well, the reality is that's not true, and we're not special. And the things that people go through, other people have gone through, most likely much, much worse and much more significant. So that, to me, was it gave me at least some level of perspective to realize that other warriors had gone through this before. This was my turn, and this is how I'm going to try and handle it.
Okay, so how do we get to this point? How do we get to a point where we will move forward regardless of what's going on in life? Because this is something most people won't do. You know it too. It's not just you, it's most people. So if you can get you to do it, how much of an advantage does that give you over the rest of the people? A fucking huge one. So what I would like you to consider is, how can you improve this part of your life? Well, it's real simple, guys. And I learned this lesson from a guitar teacher I had 10 years ago. All right. And he said to me, "Hey, Andy, you don't have any fucking patience." And I'm like, "Well, no shit, Matthew. I have fucking zero patience." And he's like, "You know how you get patience?" And I said, "How?" And he says, "By doing things that require patience." And that's what I want you to remember. If you need to understand and you need to develop how to operate regardless of what's going on in external circumstances when things are inconvenient, how do you get better at that? Well, you get better at that by doing things that are inconvenient intentionally. Okay, looking for opportunities to move forward when the circumstances are not ideal. All right, looking for opportunities to make things harder on yourself. Looking for opportunities to develop the mental aspect of discipline and fortitude that are going to move you forward. Guys, this is a major, major, major key to winning long-term in life. All right? I'm not talking about motherfuckers that win once. I'm not talking about, that's not my people. That's not you. Okay? I'm talking about making a life where you are a perpetual winner in any direction you decide to go, all right? And this is a skill you're going to have to develop. So, number one, realize, hey, do you have this or do you not? Take inventory of how many times you're talking yourself out of everything. Take inventory how many times you justify your lack of action based upon what's going on with your mood or your world or your relationship or your job. How many times are you talking yourself out of doing what you know you need to do? My guess is probably a lot more than you should be. All right. So guys, first realize that you have to build the skill. And secondly, start looking to actively build that. Now, a lot of people, you know, all the fucking weak ass motherfuckers in the world will fucking comment, why would I work to make things harder on myself? This is fucking stupid. Who the fuck is this guy? Well, this is a motherfucker that built a whole lot of shit for fucking nothing, telling you how to fucking win. Okay? That's what it is. And I'm telling you that if you want to develop this superhuman skill of kicking ass every single time, no matter what the fuck is going on in your life, no matter what's going on in your world, no matter what's going on with the weather, no matter what's going on in our crazy ass society, if you want to learn how to kick ass, regardless of all those things, you will actively seek out opportunities to strengthen this muscle that is doing shit when it's not convenient. Okay? That's called discipline. Now, discipline, guys, is the key to everything. This is why I talk about it so much. If you could be in control of your decisions and your actions 100% of the time, what could you not accomplish? And how could you be held back? And how could you not get where you want to go? Because if we're being honest with ourselves, the reason you're not where you want to be can only be one of two things. It could be one, you're working the wrong plane. And in that case, there's lots of people out there, including me, that will help you figure out how to get on the right plane. Secondly, if you are on the right plan, it's that you're not doing it long enough. You haven't been doing it long enough, okay? And the reason that you probably haven't been doing it long enough is because you fucking talk yourself out of it every time the shit ain't convenient. Success and winning is not convenient. Success and winning is not comfortable. Success and winning in fucking life is going to be a daily fucking task for you.
I'm kind of antisocial, right? Like, if you don't know me, we're not going to have a conversation. You know, like we're not having it's not. I'm not walking up and talking to you. If I don't know you, I'm not walking up and saying hi to you. It's not happening. It's not my personality. If you say hi to me, I'll say hi. I'm not disrespectful. I'm not rude, but I'm not looking to have a bunch of conversations with people. And so that's known to me. That's not okay for the business side of my life, which is, hey, I got to talk to people, got to build relationships, had to know my commanding officer, had to know the Commodore, had to know the conventional battalion commander, had to know the brigade commander, had to build relationships. Could I just talk about the war with the brigade commander? Well, I could, but what's more powerful, that I talk about war and I talk about where I'm from or where he's from or what, other things? Yes, because I want to build a relationship. Why? Because I'm trying to build trust. What? Why? Because I want him to allow me to go out there and do things in his battle space. So that's what they're asking you. They're asking you to step out of your comfort zone. Does it need to become your primary focus? No. Should you try and step out of the comfort zone? If you want to grow, if you want to have more opportunity, I would give it a try. If not, like I said, if you hate it and you feel like you're not being true to your true self, that's okay. Maybe your true self is meant to be the one that's back not getting promoted. They need somebody to do that. Yeah. If it's not you, it might be somebody else.
Yeah.
It's another one of those tough questions where people, hit me with like, should I be loyal to myself? Because the obvious answer that everyone wants to hear is like, yeah, dude, the most important thing is you got to be loyal to yourself. That's the most important thing. Yeah. Okay. If that's what your priority is, then that's the most important thing. But guess what? Who can take care of the other kitchen dogs that respect you so much? Who can take a better care of them than you can? Because if you don't get promoted and Johnny Glamour Boy gets promoted because he likes to go out and schmooze the clients, and now he gets promoted, and now who's going to take care of the kitchen dogs on his time, right? Not him. He doesn't care. He got promoted not for taking care of his guys. He got promoted because he schmoozed the clients.
And so my thought process was, man, if I'm gonna give up on wind sprints, there's no way I can lead a family. I'm like, man, if I can't lead a huddle, there's no way I can lead my son and my daughter one day. I'm like, man, if I can't show up on time, like, there's no way I can lead a wife and 2 children. Like, if I can't do what I say I'm gonna do, like, there's no way I can be a leader, a priest, and a protector and a provider. It's no way. And so what happens is you have people that look good, they look like Tarzan, but on the inside, they're Jane. You got people that know sports through and through, and to the public, they're public success, but behind closed doors, they're private failure. They can't give the same energy and the same passion to every aspect of their lives. Like, to the thing they're passionate about, they can do it like no other. But in every aspect of their lives, they can't take that energy, that passion, that level of dedication and commitment to everything that they do and understand that it's a representation of who they are. Like, at the end of the day, the core of who they are, it's almost like when you look at Adidas, you know impossible is nothing. When you look at Nike, you think just do it. And so I always ask people, when I look at you, what do I think? Excuses. Like, when I look at you, do I think victory? Do I look at you, do I think, man, that's a champion right there. That's a guy that I know I can rely on. And when things go south, he's still going to show up and give me everything he got. I told a guy 2 weeks ago, I said, brother, everybody know what to do when everything go right. I said, but the only question you haven't answered for me yet is, what are you going to do when you don't get what you thought you were going to get? What are you going to do when things go wrong? What are you going to do when you work for it and you put yourself in position to get the position, then they come to you and tell you don't have it and you feel played? Will you give up on the mission that you once had to impact lives? Like, the reason I thank you is because I know we need you. The reason I thank teachers all the time is I know we need them. My wife wanted to be a teacher from the time I met her and we was in the 2nd grade. And everybody at the park, like, man, I want to go to the NBA. I want to go to the NFL, Major League Baseball. She's like, I want to be a teacher. I'm like, teacher? She's like, yeah, I want to impact people's lives the way my 2nd grade math teacher impacted my life when I lost both of my parents and they got murdered on the same streets that we walked down to school. I'm like, man, it's deeper than that. I knew it was deeper than that when I met her in 8th grade math class, and our math teacher made us recite a proverb before school every morning. And one day we're walking in lunch and he tapped my shoulder and he said, man, you're going to marry that young lady one day. I said, you lost your mind. I need to get out of your class. I said, it was cool to teach me math. Now you're talking about my life. Like, you tripping. And he ended up walking my wife down the aisle at our wedding. And when he handed her off, he walked by me and winked. He said, I told you. But I'm sitting there thinking, how did he see it? And I started to backtrack and I said, I know exactly how he saw it. I was on a corner in my neighborhood one night with my uncles, and 2 of them are doing 40 years and 20 years in prison, federal penitentiary. And I was just standing there. Like, I wasn't doing no drugs, no drinking, none of that. I was a ball player. And a red Dodge Ram pickup truck pulled up. My uncle taps my leg and says, Ink, who is that? I said, man, that looks like my 8th grade math teacher and basketball coach. They said, what does he want? I said, what's up, Oak? How you doing, sir? He said, what are you doing? I said, I'm hanging out. He said, no, you didn't hear me. What are you doing out here? I said, I'm hanging out. He said, get in the truck. Take you home. Got in his truck, rode down the block. I got out. He said to me, son, you're special. I said, all right, man, whatever. I said, son, I see something in you.
Sometimes, even if you're the most highly motivated person in the world, that grind starts to beat you down a little bit. And that's when you have to stop looking at the short-term thing, because that's not getting you to get it done. And you got to look, okay, what is the long-term goal that I'm looking at? What am I really trying to get done in the long term? And you say, oh, you know what? I'm actually waking up today early so I can be ahead of the curve, so I can sell more of these widgets or whatever, so that I can buy a house. And you know what? Today matters. Today matters. This decision that I'm making right now is that first step. It's me taking one stroke, swimming in the right direction, heading towards the shore. And if I don't take this, I'm not making any progress.
Well, some of you read that I think about when it's hot outside, that it's sunny and 70. Well, it's fucking not today. It's the reality of about 90 degrees and 100% humidity. But who gives a shit? That being said, September 3rd, I had to have my book turned in. And when I realized, I'm reading this book a lot, but I realized I wasn't born this motherfucker. I made him. At the bottom of insecurities, fear, self-doubt, lies, was me buried in the fucking fetal position. How I got out of that was recognizing it, being honest with it, being truthful with it, and then fixing it. We like to live on social media with lies about ourselves, how great we are. Get to the source and fix the problem. I'm a big believer in doing something that sucks every single day of your life. I believe it's a key component into strengthening your mind. Every day you're trying to find more of what you're capable of. And that's the big question. What are you capable of?
Learn from the mistakes of other people because you can't make them all yourself. And so I saw them selling drugs, but I also saw the outcome. And so I said, I'm not selling drugs. I'm not joining a gang because I see where that road leads to. Either I'm going to end up dead or in prison. I said, so my best bet may be to go to the NFL. And so I went to my cousin by the name of Tamon. I said, listen, man, I want to go to the NFL. I feel our family deserves a better way of life. Let's work for it. I said, we're going to be patient. We're going to engage in consistent action every night. And so every night we would go out and we would race light pole to light pole in Kirkwood. No shoes. Light pole to light pole every night. And so one night we were getting ready to race, and down the street came a big blue pickup truck. And it pulled over to the side, and out of it got a white guy. First white guy I ever saw in my life. True story. And my uncle Bobo, who just got sentenced to 40 years in prison, he was on one corner. My other uncle Johnny, he was on the other corner. My uncle Bobo took off running, and he looked at me. He said, Ink, don't talk to him. Saying to me, that guy has to be the police. Coach Trey walked up to us, nicest guy in the world. He said, would you kids like to play organized sports? I stepped to the front. I said, yes, sir. He said, go in the house and get your guardian. My uncle JJ was there. I went in the house. I said, Unc, there's a guy outside. He asked me if he'd like to play organized sports. I told him yes. He said, well, I go in the house to get my guardian. I'm coming to get you. Will you please talk to him? Uncle said, sure. My uncle walked outside. Coach Trey said, would you like to sign these kids up for organized sports? My uncle said, yes, sir, but I hate to tell you, we don't have the money. He said, don't worry about the money. You get them to the park and I'll take care of it. That same guy still buys me drawers and socks until this day on Christmas, and I'm 29 years old, and he started when I was 7. But a weird thing happened one night. You see, most nights after practice, everybody would leave to go home, and I always had to sit in the park because my mother worked at Wendy. And my mother didn't get off work till about 10 o'clock, 10:30 most nights, and I would be sitting there in the park, and I loved it. I didn't want anybody to take me home because when I went home, I was sleeping on the floor with roaches and rats. And so anytime I got in solitude to dream, anytime I got in solitude to think about what I wanted to do for my family and my community, I took advantage of it. And so most nights, I'll be sitting there in the park, and I'll be looking up at the lights, and I'll be envisioning myself doing things in the NFL, envisioning myself doing things for my community. And just as the lights would always go out, my mother, she would pull up, and she used to drive an old Buick Regal. Hubcaps off the car seats torn up, the car was all beat up. And she would pull up and she would put the car in park. And I would always hop up, I would run over to my mother, I would give her a hug and a kiss, and I would say, Mom, if you don't mind, can you please sit back in your car? I have to do some extra drills. I have to go to the NFL. She would never have to work another day in your life. And I knew she was tired. And every night my mother would say, sure, Ink, and she would sit back in that car. Those car lights would hit that field, and here you had a 7-year-old kid doing backpedaling drills, running sprints, running laps, chasing his dream to go to the NFL. And just beyond those car lights, I could always connect with my mother's eyes. And so it made me dig a little bit deeper. It made me push myself a little bit further. It made me work a little bit harder. I live by this thing called the harder you work, the harder it is to surrender. You see, the reason people quit, they don't take pride in what they do. The harder you work, the harder it is to surrender. And I'm not just talking about business. I'm talking about winning simultaneously in every aspect of life. I'm not concerned with a person that does well in one aspect of their life and they can hang their hat there and say, man, I made a lot of money. You made a lot of money. You're a public success, but you're a private failure. What good is it to make a lot of money and you don't want to go home to your family? What good is it to make a lot of money and you don't take care of your kids? What good is it? You're a public success, but you're a private failure. And so how can we win simultaneously and take pride in everything that we do? And one night my mother couldn't pick me up and she called Coach Trey. She said, Coach, I can't make it tonight. Can you please take Inky home? And so he put me and about 8 guys in the back of his pickup truck, and he said, Inky, I'm gonna drop you off last. And so when he got to my house, I got out on the sidewalk, and I'm standing in front of 125 Warren Street, and I looked back at Coach Trey, and I said, why are you doing this? Because where I came from, people didn't just help you. It was, I pat you on your back, you gotta pat me on my back. You remember I did that for you, you gotta do this for me. And I said, why are you doing this? And he looked back at me and he said, son, I want to tell you something. And he said, I don't want you to ever forget it. He said, son, the more you make sure that somebody else's life is okay, God will always make sure that your life is okay.
Over caution. Some people never will have much. They're too cautious. Now, you can also be too reckless, but you can also be too cautious. This is called the timid approach to life. And my caution was always the risk. Risk used to drive me right up the wall. I used to say, what if this happens? It's called the language of the poor. What if this happens? And on top of that, if this was to happen, look at the fix I'd be in. I'd better not try. I could always ace myself out. Then I'll tell you what changed my whole life when I finally discovered it's all risky. The minute you were born, it got risky. If you think trying is risky, wait till they hand you the bill for not trying. If you think investing is risky, wait till you get the tab for not investing. See, it's all risky. Getting married is risky. Having children is risky. Going into business is risky. Investing your money is risky. It's all risky. I'll tell you how risky life is. You're not going to get out alive. The Englishman says, well, if that's the way it's going to work out, let's give it a go. Right, that's what it's for. Give it a go. Somebody says, yeah, but I'm looking for safety and security. Fine, then huddle in a corner. We'll cover you with a sheet, bring you 3 meals a day. And we'll protect you, feed you, look after you, care for you. We won't let anything happen to you. And you'll probably live to be 100. The guy said, well, yeah, I'd live to be 100. But what a way to live. Right. What a way to live, safe and secure. Don't ask for security. Ask for adventure. Better to live 30 years full of adventure than 100 years safe in the corner. And see, it's not important how long you live. What's important is how you live. The next one is pessimism. Pessimism, the deadly disease of always looking on the bad side, the problem side, the difficult side, checking all the reasons why it can't be done. The poor pessimist leads an ugly life. He doesn't try to figure out what's right. He tries to figure out what's wrong. He doesn't look for virtue. He looks for faults. And when he finds them, he's delighted. How ugly. This is the poor guy who looks through the window, doesn't see the sunset. He sees the specks on the window. And this is the poor guy, right, who rushes up, takes such leave of his senses. This guy rushes up and he says, I've got 5 good reasons why it won't work. He's so dumb he doesn't know all he needs 1. He's got 5. To the pessimist, the glass is always half empty. To the optimist, the glass is half full. Why would the same measure affect people 2 different ways? Answer. It all depends on how you look at it. Our lives are mostly affected by the way we think things are, not the way they are. The way we think they are affects us most. The last disease, but this one is deadly. Engage in this one, indulge in it even slightly, and you might as well forget the future because it's going to forget you. Complaining, crying, whining, griping, a Bible word called murmuring. See, that'll ace your future. Spend 5 minutes complaining and you have wasted 5. And you may have begun what's known as economic cancer of the bone. Surely they will soon haul you off into a financial desert and there let you choke on the dust of your own regret. I hope I said that well, so you won't forget. It's a deadly disease. If you don't think it's bad, ask the children of Israel of Old Testament fame. Typical of us all, their story just happened to get in the book. Story says, children of Israel were slaves. God performed a series of dazzling miracles and got them out. And now they're heading for the promised land. Remember the story? Heading for the promised land. Tragedy of the story, they never got there. Reason, from day 1, they started to complain. They griped about the water. They griped about the weather. They whined and cried and griped about the food. They griped about the leadership. They whined and cried because it was too far, too cold, too hot, too difficult, too miserable. I mean, they whined and cried for years. Finally, God said, I've had it, trip canceled. The story says they died in the desert, never got to the promise, which I think means 2 things. Indulge in this long enough, you get your future canceled. And I guess it also means even God himself can only take so much. Just be on the lookout of the things that can destroy all the good you start. The war is on. And this evening, tomorrow, mentally, personally, socially, economically, you got to make sure you're winning the war.
Okay, I know I'm lying to myself. I know that my discipline edge, my discipline blade, so to speak, is getting dull. All right? And I can see it when I look in the fucking mirror. And so can you, by the way. You want to know how hard you are? Look in the fucking mirror. That's an exact mirror image of how hard you are on the fucking inside. But here's the thing. Everybody sees people who look great, who have all the confidence, who have all the self-esteem, who have all this ability, who have all these things going for them, and they think they got it all figured out. They think it's easy for them, and that's one of the justifications that they tell themselves, all right? It's not like there aren't days I don't want to go to the gym. The truth is, most of the days I don't want to go to the gym, but I do, even though I don't feel like it. Doesn't matter if there's a fucking tornado, if there's a snowstorm, if there's a hurricane, if the fucking world is on fire, the job has to get done. It's about executing regardless of your emotions. All right. And that's a well-covered topic. I talk about it a lot. All right. But what almost no one talks about is starting to love the days you have to execute, that you have to perform, that you have to get the job done, especially when you don't feel like it. That's what I call test days, and that's what I want to cover with you guys. These test days, guys, these are the days that test your qualities. They test your characters. They test who you think you are.